General Hospital spoilers tease that in a twist as shocking as it is inevitable, Cyrus Renault's life is destined to end in a manner that no one in Port Charles could have foreseen. The whispers suggest that fate has conspired against the notorious antagonist, setting the stage for an unexpected demise that intertwines betrayal, revenge, and the weight of deep-seated family secrets. In this intricate web of plots and counterplots, it is revealed that two key players, Danny Morgan and Rocco Falconeri, have meticulously plotted to take down Cyrus once and for all. Meanwhile, Sonny Corinthos, ever the reluctant protector, is forced into the role of covering up the unfolding chaos by concealing Cyrus's body. His actions, driven by a need to safeguard the lives of the younger generation, teeter on the edge of moral compromise, especially as an unexpected figure, Harrison Chase, threatens to expose the truth. From the earliest whispers among the corridors of Port Charles, it became clear that Cyrus Renault was not simply an elusive criminal mastermind, but a man whose dark deeds had far-reaching consequences. Cyrus's notoriety had grown over the years, yet one secret haunted him more than any other: the murder of Sam McCall, the birth mother of Danny Morgan. For Danny, the revelation of his mother's tragic fate had always been shrouded in mystery and grief. In recent times, however, new clues have begun to surface, rumors and hints that pointed unmistakably in Cyrus's direction. Danny, fueled by a thirst for vengeance and the raw pain of loss, became increasingly convinced that the man responsible for his mother's untimely death was none other than Cyrus Renault. This belief festered into a burning desire for retribution, leading Danny to approach his father, Jason Morgan, with an urgent plea to kill Cyrus and avenge Sam McCall's death. Jason Morgan, a man tempered by decades of hardship and hardened by the realities of life in Port Charles, listened to his son's impassioned request. Yet, with the wisdom that comes from experience and a deep understanding of the long-term consequences of rash actions, Jason refused to commit to such an irreversible course. He argued that while the desire for revenge was understandable, taking the law into one's own hands could lead to further bloodshed and leave scars that might never heal. This paternal caution, however, did little to temper Danny's fervor. Confronted with the impasse and driven by youthful impulsiveness and a near total disregard for the potentially disastrous repercussions, Danny decided to act on his own. Convinced that the pain of his loss and the injustice of Sam's death demanded immediate retribution, Danny resolved to eliminate Cyrus by any means necessary, even if it meant defying his father's wishes. Realizing that such a perilous mission could not be accomplished single-handedly, Danny turned to an unlikely ally, Rocco Falconeri. Known for his own complicated past and hardened by the brutal realities of life in Port Charles, Rocco found himself in a position where the lure of justice, or perhaps vengeance, resonated with his own inner turmoil. Danny, with a mix of determination and persuasion, painted a grim picture of the suffering inflicted by Cyrus. He reminded Rocco of the pain endured by Scout Quartermain, a casualty of the broader consequences of Cyrus's merciless actions. By emphasizing the human cost of Cyrus's reign of terror, Danny managed to kindle a spark of empathy in Rocco, ultimately convincing him that taking down Cyrus was not only justified but necessary. With their alliance sealed by mutual grief and a shared desire for retribution, Danny and Rocco began to meticulously plan their ambush. They decided to use a weapon with a grim history, the gun once belonging to Jason Morgan himself. This choice was not made lightly. It was imbued with symbolic meaning, representing the shattered trust and blood ties that bound the Morgan family. The plan was simple in theory: lure Cyrus into a vulnerable position, strike swiftly and decisively, and erase him from the tapestry of Port Charles once and for all. Every detail was discussed in hushed tones, every risk weighed against the potential for justice. The conspirators were fully aware that their actions, if discovered, would not only endanger their own lives, but also ripple outward, affecting everyone connected to the dark undercurrents of the city. On the fateful day, as tension and anticipation mingled in the air, Danny and Rocco set their plan into motion. They chose a secluded location, a dimly lit, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Port Charles, where they believed Cyrus would be most vulnerable. The stage was set with eerie precision, and every moment seemed to pulse with the promise of violent retribution. Yet, as the duo stealthily moved through the shadows, fate intervened in the form of Sonny Corinthos. Always vigilant and attuned to the undercurrents of the criminal world, Sonny happened upon the pair as they covertly made their way toward their target. His keen instincts, honed by years of navigating the treacherous waters of Port Charles, immediately raised alarms. Sensing that something was amiss, Sonny silently trailed Danny and Rocco, determined to uncover the truth behind their secretive movements. As the ambush reached its critical moment, the tension escalated to a fever pitch. Cyrus Renaud, the man many believed to be untouchable despite his heinous crimes, found himself confronted by the lethal combination of youth, fury, and misguided justice. Danny and Rocco, armed with Jason's gun and their own burning resolve, launched their attack. In a flurry of desperate exchanges and the acrid scent of gunpowder, shots rang out in the darkness. The impact was immediate and brutal. Cyrus was struck, his body collapsing under the weight of the bullet that found its mark. In that heart-stopping moment, time seemed to stand still, and the consequences of decades of violence and betrayal converged in a single, irrevocable act. Just as the chaos reached its apex, Sonny, having followed the trail of the conspirators, arrived at the scene. He witnessed the aftermath. Cyrus, now grievously wounded and gasping his final breaths, lay vulnerable on the cold, hard floor of the warehouse. Sonny's heart churned with a mix of anger and sorrow. The violence inflicted by the young conspirators, though perhaps understandable given the circumstances, struck a deep chord within him. He recognized that while retribution had been long sought, the price paid in blood and innocence was one that could never be fully reconciled. With the knowledge that Cyrus's death would unleash a cascade of consequences, Sonny resolved to act quickly. In his mind, the protection of the younger generation, Danny and Rocco, was paramount. Despite his own inner turmoil, he made a fateful decision. He would take the burden of hiding Cyrus's body, an act meant to shield the children from the inevitable fallout that such a murder would incite. In the moments that followed, Sonny's resolve was put to the test. Determined to prevent further chaos and to contain the damage wrought by this brutal act, he swiftly escorted Danny and Rocco away from the scene, urging them to keep silent and to disappear into the shadows from whence they came. However, fate, as it often does in Port Charles, had yet another twist in store. Unbeknownst to Sonny, Harrison Chase, a relentless investigator with his own hidden agenda, had been quietly tracking Cyrus in an effort to gather incontrovertible evidence of his crimes. Chase's determination had led him to follow a trail of clues that, until that moment, had remained frustratingly incomplete. Yet, as he finally arrived at the warehouse, he discovered a scene that was both eerie and incriminating. Cyrus's lifeless body lay alone, the only other presence being Sonny, who was visibly shaken and burdened by the gravity of what had transpired. Harrison Chase's arrival could not have been more ill-timed. Rocco and Danny had already vanished into the night, leaving behind a scene where the only witnesses were a dying Cyrus and a distraught Sonny. The evidence, though circumstantial, painted a damning picture. With Cyrus's body as the focal point, all eyes were drawn to Sonny Corinthos. His frantic attempts to hide the body, his hushed explanations, and the very circumstances of the ambush made him the prime suspect in the murder of one of Port Charles's most feared figures. The implications were staggering. Not only would Sonny now have to navigate the treacherous waters of criminal investigations, but he would also be forced to contend with the fallout within his own family and the larger criminal network that had long depended on his influence and protection. For Sonny, this moment was a turning point, a moment when his carefully maintained balance between loyalty, duty, and moral ambiguity was shattered. As he stood there, with the weight of the night's events bearing down upon him, Sonny knew that his actions, however well-intentioned in the moment, would have lasting repercussions. The decision to hide Cyrus's body, made in the hope of protecting Danny and Rocco from further harm, had instead placed him squarely in the crosshairs of an investigation that threatened to dismantle everything he had built over the years. Harrison Chase's presence, with his unwavering determination to bring the truth to light, signaled that no secret, no matter how deeply buried, would remain hidden forever in Port Charles. The ripples of that fateful night were sure to be felt far and wide. The intricate web of alliances and enmities that had long defined the relationships between the characters was now inextricably altered. Danny's impulsive act of vengeance, born out of personal loss and a desire for retribution, had set in motion a chain of events that would haunt him for years to come. Rocco, too, found himself caught in the maelstrom of guilt and regret, knowing that his decision to stand by Danny had irrevocably changed the course of his life. And Sonny, the reluctant patriarch who had always walked a razor's edge between justice and compromise, now faced the prospect of being branded as the mastermind behind Cyrus Renault's death, a label that carried with it not only legal consequences, but also the heavy burden of betrayal. In the days that followed, as investigators pieced together the fragments of evidence and as the truth began to emerge from the shadows, the fallout from that explosive ambush would become the subject of heated debate and relentless scrutiny. Harrison Chase's discovery of the scene would lead to a cascade of questions. How had Cyrus, a man whose crimes had long been the subject of speculation, met his end at the hands of those he had least expected? What role had Danny and Rocco played in the assassination, and why had they felt compelled to act when even Jason Morgan had refused to take such drastic measures? And, most pressingly, how would Sonny Corinthos, a man whose life had been defined by the interplay of loyalty, love, and ruthless pragmatism, navigate the treacherous aftermath of an act that was as much about protecting family as it was about exacting revenge? The consequences of that night were bound to ripple through every facet of life in Port Charles. For Danny, the realization that his actions had led to his father's potential condemnation and the irreversible fracture in the family bond would serve as a harsh lesson in the dangers of youthful impulsivity and unchecked emotion. Rocco, too, would be forced to confront the moral implications of his involvement, grappling with the knowledge that his loyalty had been manipulated by a desire for retribution that had ultimately doomed them all. And Sonny, caught between the demands of his criminal empire and the responsibilities of fatherhood and guardianship, would have to endure the crushing weight of being the one person responsible for hiding the body of a man who had caused immeasurable pain. In the end, the saga of Cyrus Renault's unexpected demise is not simply a tale of violent retribution. It is a story about the corrosive nature of secrets, the perilous allure of vengeance, and the devastating consequences that arise when personal loss is met with rash action. As the dust settles and the truth slowly comes to light, every character involved will be forced to reckon with the fact that in the intricate and unforgiving world of General Hospital, every act of violence leaves scars that time cannot erase. And for Sonny Corinthos, whose actions in the dead of night have now made him the prime suspect in a murder investigation, the future remains shrouded in uncertainty. A future where the price of protecting the ones he loves may ultimately be the loss of everything he holds dear.